Welcome to Pau for the Grand Prix and for the night race that will include the second race weekend of the Porsche Carrera Cup for 2012. And the big story is the man that is on pole position is the current World Rally Champion. Well, I could have said that he was the current World Champion, not just this year, but last year, and the year before, past 8. Yeah, exactly. Going back to 2005, I could have said, this man is the current World Rally Champion. Who would have thunk it all those years ago that no one would be able to beat him? And came close in 09 when Mikko Hirvonen got within a point of beating him. As the grid girls, well, they've had a long and busy day. I think
that they get overtime.
They're all actually trying to go towards Sebastien Loeb's hotel at the moment. Every single one of them seem to be taking an interest in the great man. And you can see it is 9:50 local time. Woolly hat is on. The man at the back there is looking like he's ready for some action. But most importantly, we are ready to see 40 minutes of racing action for the Porsche Carrera Cup France. Sponsor this series. And we've got a good entry of 18 cars, a mixture of two main classes for drivers, which is the professional and then the Trophy B for gentlemen, Trophy A for the main professional drivers. Of course, Loeb, Vernet, Beltoise, Comme Ledegar, who won in the opening round at Ledenon, is our current championship leader. And we are watching with interest to see which of the drivers is going to be able to get the best of the starts. Not an easy thing to get off the line, Will, is it?
No, you've got a lot of power, very easy to spin up the rear wheels. The track temperature is going to have dropped a lot since they were last on circuit, so they've got to bear that in mind. And as you can see the times there, you know, it's tough at the top. There's not a lot separating the front guys. Loeb did seem to have the measure of everyone by just being able to throw in that lap when it mattered to get himself on the front row. Whether that was sheer brilliance and he's got this all in hand, or whether he was trying his hardest, we will find out in due course.
Well, certainly from the onboard we were watching, there was plenty of opposite lock, lots of locking up on the downshifts going on, so maybe it was absolutely as far as it could go in terms of a performance for Loeb. Certainly didn't look to me like there was much to give, much more to give from the Frenchman.
Are we about to see a safety car start?
I don't think so. I don't know. It looked, could be, couldn't it? That certainly looks like the safety car ahead of us, doesn't it? Riding on board below, a very moody and artistic shot of the team members.
Smile, you're on camera.
Smile, you're on camera indeed. Well, the Porsche safety car comes around. Your point's a very good one. Well, are we going to see a safety car start? I hope not. I hope we see a proper start, because they're infinitely more exciting, aren't they, on a circuit like this?
They are, but I think we've just got our answer there as they start to line up in grid order. I think we're going to have a rolling start.
Could be. We didn't get that information through, unfortunately. So we will have to watch with interest to see who gets the best of the starts. Both Jean-Carl Vernet has done an awful lot of racing in America, remember. He's done the Indy Lights Championship, which he won in 2010, which is all rolling starts. So could be good for him, couldn't it?
Absolutely. There's some top talent in the front of this grid. This is going to be a special race, I think.
And you can hear, I think they've saved the best to last from the fans' point of view, because as much as all the other races are thrilling for everybody to watch, this guy is the absolute legend of all French motorsport, is Sebastien Loeb. He's so incredibly popular. He's such a charismatic guy. Now, it's interesting there. You can see the safety car passenger holding out two fingers there, which I'm guessing is not an impolite salute that an Englishman might make. It's actually to give them some sort of info. I can't imagine they're saying there's 2 more laps, can you?
No, I do recall them holding their hands out the windows in the last start. So
two by two, maybe, that's what it's saying?
2 by 2, absolutely. So I think we're about to see them get underway here.
So let's watch with interest to see who gets the better start through the glare of the lights. Sebastien Loeb is on the left as we look at it, 40 minutes.
And we're racing.
And we are indeed. And is it going to be Loeb? It is Loeb who gets across the head of Vernet and Beltoise. The rest of the pack charge down into turn 1. The LED lights flash in unison on the back of the Porsches. They power up the hill, all 450 horsepower of these magnificent machines charging up the hill. I don't know what 450 horsepower times 18 is, but it's enough to make the streets echo here in Po to the sound of somebody actually off nice and early, unfortunately for them.
That's the run-off road at turn 1, so obviously never even made it around the first corner.
Yeah, can't see from that angle.
Sebastien Loeb already pulling a second on the rest of the pack.
Now, we talked about this earlier, didn't we, Will, about the possibility of Loeb on cold tyres being on another level because of what he's used to doing with his rallying career on tarmac. And do you think that's a factor in these conditions, with the cooler conditions, cold tyres, a street circuit, and cars which are moving around as much as Porsches do? Is that the factor?
Well, I think if anyone could find the usable grip, it's going to be Sebastien Loeb. Obviously, he's probably used to a lot of anti-lag and launch control in his rally car, but he seemed to have no problem, straight across, covered the second place, dominant position into the first turn, and now he's got I'm guessing he's going to get past this line with over a second gap on the rest of the pack.
Little lift there through the right-hander. Don't blame them, really, do you? They've got to be doing what?
Yellow flags out into turn 1.
160 miles an hour maybe into turn 1, would you suggest, from the Porsches?
I don't know if it's going to be quite that much, but they are definitely going to be pressing on there.
Yeah, well, at the moment it does look like Loeb has just got enough up the road. He's fastest sectors 2 and 3, 1.058. Your guess was a pretty good one, Will. And it's Jean-Carl Viernet second himself, 1.5 seconds up the road on Beltoise, who has got just 4/10 on Comme-Ledegar.
These cars just look fantastic at night through the streets, don't they?
I mean, they have really genuinely saved the best to last in terms of the Porsches are absolutely the most spectacular in terms of sound and vision, as much as we enjoyed. Oh, a bit of a moment there for one of the cars. Was that Ledegar? I think that might have been who got a little bit of a swing. Was Comme-Ledegar got a bit of a slide on Gael Castelli, who himself is under pressure from Julien Prichet, who, as much as he would like to get 2 wins in one night, I think that's going to be a bit of a tall order from where he is at the moment. 6, all pretty much in the order that they started at the moment. Nothing's really much changed. Orange Bard leading the Gentleman's Cup, the driver who actually had an off right at the end of the second qualifying session. They do a really interesting way that they do it. So 1.2 now the lead that Loeb has is that they, more of an oversteering moment. They do the first part of the qualifying session for the A drivers, then a bit of a break, then the B drivers. It works quite well, Will, doesn't it?
Yeah, it gave them all a bit of a fair chance, a good run in qualifying to show what they could do. Interesting, these low lights. I wonder whether we're perhaps going to see the odd apex cut a bit too tight, little exit, too much exit used, just as the lights start to dazzle your vision. You know, it starts to get a bit heated, the light's a bit low, your eyes start to play tricks with you a little bit. So it's going to take a lot of concentration, 40 minutes around these streets.
The other point is, yeah, it's a really good point, but the other thing is that, you know, we were seeing these guys out qualifying mid-afternoon. They were out of the race car and finished by 4:10. So that's like, you know, basically more than 5 hours between qualifying and racing. Is there a chance that fatigue will have started to affect some people, or is the adrenaline enough, do you think, to pump them back up again?
I think the top boys, the professionals in this, won't have a problem with it at all, but it can be quite draining just standing around waiting for 5 hours. You know, it's quite hard to keep that explosive adrenaline focus. We've got a car slowing down here.
And we've got Verne. There's a puncher, and I can't see which of the drivers that is.
Could be more like suspension. It looked like it was
yes,
bouncing up and down in the rear corner.
Something not right anyway, but Loeb lost something like 0.4 seconds on that last lap.
Gap down to 0.8, so yeah, not as comfortable as he would like at the moment. But yellow flags, we've got a spinner,
yeah,
sorting himself out, light the rear wheels up, turn it round, carry back on.
Orange Bard, that was Orange Bard who spun. He was leading the category for the gentleman driver. So that means it's almost certainly Christophe Lapierre or Lonnie Martins are the drivers who were immediately behind him, who may well have got themselves ahead of Orange Bard. And he's not having the best of days, Orange. In some respects, he's been very good. He's quickest by some way in the Gentleman's Cup. But then he had an off in qualifying. Now he's had a spin in the first race, which is
they must have only just finished repairing that car after the qualifying session earlier with his little running with the barriers up at turn 2.
A little bit of a loss of focus of the camera there. Either that or we're getting tired as well, Will, and the eyes have gone. I think it's the camera, hopefully. Ledegar still trying to close down a little bit on Beltoise.
It was Bottomau, I think, who's retired, that we saw perhaps with either punch or suspension failure.
Yeah, I think Roland Berville was the driver. He went off on the first lap, and then we've seen Sacha Bottomau and Didier Moreau not come round either, so that could have been Moreau could have been the one that was going slowly, or Bottomau, one of those two, wasn't it?
And Loeb just setting the fastest lap of the race again, upping the gap by another 10th, so it looks quite close as they exit the tight hairpin there. The gap doesn't look a lot. Second is not a long way.
Yeah, I think this gap sort of stabilised, in fact, just behind Loeb, then Colm Ledegaard had just gone slightly quicker, 20.068, so there's still a couple of seconds off of the time they did in qualifying. That could be partly because obviously the first heat cycle they put through on new tyres has obviously gone away a little bit, and it could also, of course, be that the conditions now, whereas the track will have improved in some respects because there's more rubber gone down, the temperature will have dropped massively, and of course it will have got a lot more dirty.
Yeah, absolutely. The track temperature definitely would have played a factor. They'd probably started off with different PSI settings in their tyres before they started the race. Perhaps just a couple of PSI further up the scale before the start of the race, just to try and help get some temperature. We should get more of an idea as the race progresses, what sort of tyre strategies people have gone with, whether they want the tyres to come in straight away and they may start to struggle as the race goes on, or other guys who are going to try and maintain an even tyre balance throughout the race. Sebastien obviously sitting at the front, he's a second ahead, probably taking it quite easy on his tyres at the moment. I think he's going to want to try and save something for the second half of the race, just to make sure he can maintain this gap over Vernet, who is a very quick driver, and I think he's probably capable of giving Loeb a bit of a run for his money.
Well, there's the best part of 15 years between the two of them. Vernet, 24 years old, Loeb coming up to 39 years old. Seems to, there's another year in his contract with Citroën at the end of this year to potentially go to see him take 9, maybe 10 World Championships if he could do that. I mean, at the moment, he seems to have had everything fall his way. Jari-Matti Latvala having dramas and ending up with an injury as well, having some offs after such a strong start to the year. Winning in Sweden, of course. And then, of course, Mikael Kievanen being impressive, actually taking a win in Portugal, but then getting disqualified, and Mads Osberg taking that win. So the world of world rallying has once again meant that the precision and performance of Loeb has been bearing him dividends every time. So that time, 2/10 he lost to Vernet on that lap.
Yeah, down to 7/10 now. It's closing up a little bit with half hour to go. I think it's going to get a bit tight towards the end.
Yeah, and it could well be that, as you said, the experience maybe in a race situation that Sebastien Loeb has is slightly different to Vernet. Vernet maybe could be in a situation to, you know, perhaps, who knows, perhaps just get himself into a charge at the end. Or is that contact? Is that a recovering Orange Bard, I think?
Yeah, it's Bard down, trying to take 15th place. He's obviously a lot quicker than the guys in front, and I think a bit of frustration creeping in as he starts to roll his sleeves up and push people out of the way.
Indeed, and going to watch to see with interest which of the drivers can do the best. Now, Julien Brichet, currently sitting there in 6th. He took a win in the second race at Ledenon. Also, the first race was won by Colm Ledegaard, but Brichet had a bit of a rough start to the series, only scoring 8 points in the opening race. Ledegaard having a win and then 11 points in race 2. Remember, there's the Gentleman's Trophy, there's the main category, the Trophy A, and there's also a junior category as well, which at the moment We're watching to see which of the drivers does best of that. And Como Ledegar is, of course, going to be the best driver of that because he's leading the championship. So what's the gap this time, Will?
We're back up to 8/10, so he's Loeb seems to have it all under control. If you notice from his onboard, it almost seems like he's just driving to the grid. You know, he's really smooth, really controlled. I get the slight impression he's very much in his comfort zone here.
I think when you see somebody with such a high level of natural ability, everything that everybody else would make look like they're actually working at, he just looks like he's cruising at somebody off there, obviously, on the exit there. You might see them going again, Castelli and Brichet. That fight's going to go on and on. I think Brichet got a really good run that time. Is he thinking about going to the inside? But this isn't flat for these cars. It's flat for some things. Oh, Brichet looking like he had a bit of oversteer as he came through. That's what's going to make it hard to overtake into turn one, is that corner before that for those cars, isn't it?
Yeah, the kink where these guys have to get out of the throttle, it is going to hurt the overtaking chances.
So just under a tenth of a second between Brichet and Castelli, both championship winning drivers in France, and certainly Brichet now a championship leading driver in the RCZ Cup after his tremendous performance under great pressure in the opening race we saw a little bit earlier in the darkness here. And it really is tough, isn't it? That onboard, as you say, from Loeb's car just gives you an indication of how hard it is to pick out your points of reference.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you're this close to the car in front as well. None of it helps, but you know, these guys, especially at the front, we've got some top drivers here, and Sebastian's obviously going to be well used to driving absolutely flat out through trees in the pitch black, so I'm sure he'll be absolutely fine with this. But the rest of these guys,
that oversteer.
That was Brichet, wasn't it?
It was Brichet. Maybe he's a bit tired after his
Well, that's
his
the one thing I was
exerts.
going to say, is his focus after doing 25 minutes in the RCZ is going to be, you know, it's going to have a lot of drain on it. So whether he can, we see the opposite lock again. This is what I was talking about. You know, these conditions, especially after you've already done a race, little mistakes start to creep in, and it just takes that little moment for you to clip a barrier, and you're suddenly out of the race.
And is that Sylvain Noël on the back of him there? I think it is, isn't it? Trying to give him a bit of a hurry up now and say, look, you know, I can see you're a bit sloppy, you're making a few mistakes, maybe, just maybe, I can have a little go at and have a look past. Oh, bit of dust there. That's from a previous situation where someone had stopped. Oh, 8/10 of a second up the road now. Both into the top three drivers into the 19s now. 19.9 for Loeb in the lead, and 19.8 now. Is that a back marker that we've got to contend with, Will?
Yeah, I think we are going to start to see the guys catching up with the rest of the field now.
Second sector, no, they were pretty even, so clearly
a bit quicker.
That back marker must have played nice, I suppose, and just got up well and truly out. Maybe
you guys a wide line.
Yeah, maybe when Loeb came barreling past, it gave him a big old hurry up to just stay off the racing line and let Vernet dive through in a similar way.
You tend to be, as the leader, you get the best help from blue flags by the marshals, but you also open the door then for everyone who's chasing you. And unfortunately, given the fact it's night time, blue flags aren't all that obvious.
Well, we saw it in the RCZ Cup race where Jaminet, he was in third, got the rough end of the stick on the back markers. The top two got past nicely, and then Jaminet got chopped across, and I don't think intentionally, but he just wasn't very aware, was he? This fight is going to go on and on. Remember Sylvain Noël, who is in 7th at the moment in the Racing Technology car. He's currently 2nd in the championship, only 3 points behind Ledegar, and Brichet is equal 2nd as well. So at the moment you've got Ledegar, Brichet and Noël, who are 4th, 6th and 7th. Ledegar, I think, is possibly going to extend his championship lead at the end of this, even though he's only running in 4th at the moment.
Yeah, these guys all right on top of each other at the moment.
Yeah, not much in it at all, is there? It's really interesting to see which one of these guys is going to break away or possibly make a mistake. Certainly Brichet was the one that we saw a bit leery early on, wasn't he?
Yeah, but Brichet obviously, he probably thought, I hope I get a nice relaxing 40-minute race, and he's right in the thick of it at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a lock-up there from Ledegar. I think that time, was it Beltoise rather, that time. Still 1, 2, 3 for Sebastien Loeb Racing. For Loeb, obviously, that clearly must be the future. His motorsport future is going to be moving into sports car racing, we think, and I'd like to see him race regularly at Le Mans now. A bit of defensive driving going on from Beltoise there. Interesting that he felt the need to do that, Will.
Yeah, I think he's under a lot of pressure at the moment. He's very much holding the rest of these guys up. But they're going to have to pressure him into a mistake or make an overtake stick. Otherwise, they're going to have to sit behind him.
Yeah, now coming up to exactly half distance in this race. 20 minutes of the 40 minutes around the streets of Pau. They've completed 14 laps, so looks likely, barring a safety car, we're on for 28 laps of action in total around here. That gives us an indication of just how demanding it is. And as you were saying, Richet, who's had a busy evening of it so far, we'll see him step out of this car, and I think he's conscious of how well he's got to try to do in this championship, but he's also got a conscious of trying to make sure he finishes this. I think Ledegar is getting very, very close to Beltoise now.
Is he going to have a look into turn one? Not close enough. As they charge up the hill, there's nothing to separate them.
He was better out turn one, wasn't he, Ledegar? Definitely.
Yeah, he looks like he's got the run. I don't think he'll be doing anything. The overtake is very much covered into this left-hander. Don't think he'll be able to make any advances through the hairpin unless he just forces his way past. But that tight line, he uses a bit of that curb, and they're just getting pushed along. I mean, they really are all on top of them.
It all does look a bit scrappy, doesn't it? I look at this, Ledegar up on the curb. That looks like he just outbraked himself. Remember, it used to be that the Porsches had ABS as the race car, not in this version of them. That doesn't happen anymore, does it? Meanwhile, Loeb has got the lead. Well, it had gone up a little bit. Now it's gone back a bit. 0.4 of a second. It's come right down again. It was 1.2 only a couple of laps ago. Loeb either has a problem or has made a mistake somewhere, and Vernet has capitalised on it.
I think Vernet's just been putting him under a lot of pressure, but Loeb does seem to be quicker on this lap, so whether he's going to extend that a fraction. Yeah, he's back up to 7/10 now. Loeb's got it under control.
Yeah, mega sector 2 and sector 3, wasn't it? Really just made a bit of a mess of the previous lap somewhere. Oh, there's the tyre square off. Who is that? That is the 7 car in the wall of Beltoise. So was that contact from Ledegar, I wonder?
I think that's just a build-up of pressure, and it's forced a mistake. He's lucky to have rejoined as quickly as he did. I'd like to see where everyone else has settled down to. Up at the tail end of the podium there. That was the battle for third place.
Well, I'm just looking to see if there's any damage on the front as Ledegar gets very sideways. Championship leader, remember. He's now into a podium position and on definitely for extending his championship lead, assuming, and it is one of those never assume it makes a what's it of you and me and all that sort of stuff, assuming that there wasn't contact with Beltoise and he may potentially risk a penalty. Castelli seems to be the strongest of these drivers at the moment, doesn't he? Seems to be really, really putting pressure on Ledegar.
He's all over the back of Ledegar, and I wouldn't have thought Ledegar would have been the result of that going straight on the first turn, because it's very risky to use the front of your car as a battering ram because your radiators are right at the front, and we're side by side the exit of here. Yeah, that's a tough pull side by side there.
Oh my goodness me, and that is I think that is not Brichet, isn't it? Brichet on Castelli, sticking it out. Is he going to hold it in there? If he does, it's going to be the move of the day, I think.
Side by side,
not quite enough. Not quite. Oh, 10 out of 10. He might be a bit tired, but clearly the old adrenaline's flowing.
Oh, he's still very much up for this, isn't he?
Absolutely. Well, great racing. We sometimes worry that Porsches, because they're so quick, on a circuit like this, can get a little bit spread out, but certainly not happening here. At the front, it's down to 4/10 as well between Loeb and Vernet. We've just seen Beltoise go off, and now we've got a battle on for the last podium position, Will. It's fantastic.
It's all happening now with 15 minutes still to go. It's all to play for.
Yep, and nothing is certain as yet. Anything could change at any moment. Now, here we go. No, he just lost it on his own. Beltoise just lost the back end. He locked the rears up and put himself into the wall. So Vincent Beltoise.
Oh, back marker, just having to put himself against the barriers to let those three go past there.
Eric Diamant in the gentleman class. It's in the gentleman class at the moment. It's still Christophe Lapierre, who I think is leading that class. Just ahead of Bruno Stratzer, who's come up from the back of the grid. So he's had a good performance so far.
So this battle for third reigns on. Ledegaard not able to pull a gap on the rest of them.
No,
Ledegaard looking very racy.
You know, you were saying earlier about the way that the teams can set up the tyre pressure, for example. You usually get it over a longish race like this, that it's the car's either better at the beginning or better at the end. But in this case, it looks to me like maybe Ledegaard's car was stronger at the beginning but didn't get the break he needed. So he's struggling a little bit more as the race gets towards the end.
Again, as they come down through the faster sections, we join our leader on board. Is that a back marker in front?
Well, we'll see in a second.
Lost a bit of coverage. This is going to be costing him. Perhaps this is why this gap keeps reducing.
Just trying to see, is that a back marker? Is that Vernet in front of him? He's too quick to be a back marker. That's Vernet, isn't it? That surely is Jean-Carl Vernet has got past Sebastien Loeb. Or has he? No, it is a back marker. And look at Vernet, he's all over Loeb. Loeb is putting pressure. I wonder who that is that's in front of him.
Get out of the way.
Sebastien Loeb will be saying all kinds of naughty words in French, no doubt. And Vernet's hoping he can judge it correctly, but the lead has gone
2 tenths.
Oh, with 14 minutes to go, the back marker just gets in the way when you least wanted him to. I think that.
Oh, hang on, they've swapped places.
No, they have. Have they? Don't think they have. Let's have another look. No, it is still Loeb. It is still Loeb. Oh, goodness me, that you got me going there, Will.
Sorry.
Hard to see, isn't it? With the lights blaring at you, you can't see the timing screen. Sometimes doesn't tell the full picture. Now this is where Loeb is going to show what he's worth. If he can just break away once again.
Well, his lead's been completely eroded by that back marker, which I'm sure he'll be, well, not high-fiving when he gets out of the car.
Again, it's a situation Loeb, never really has to deal with in his chosen form of motorsport.
Still looking very smooth and in control of the car. It looks very tidy.
One of the things I've always noticed with Sebastien Loeb when you see the onboard of him rallying, regardless of the surface, is his throttle control. As with any great racing or rally driver, the way that he can just about get the power on as early as possible. As you see, maybe was at the back marker again, getting in there. He's doing well today, this boy, isn't he? I think let's see if we can work out who it is. No idea which driver it is. It keeps positioning his car in an awkward look. He's done it again.
Appreciate just
two, maybe. Yeah, Tony Samon. Tony Samon is going to get words afterwards, I think.
The trouble is, like I was saying earlier, it's very hard to see the blue flags, very hard to know who's behind you, and all you can see is lights.
Yeah, well, you know there's a pack coming through, and that's really hurt Julien Brichet. He was right on the tail of Gael Castelli before that, and it's spread all three of those cars out quite a bit. We saw Ledegaard, Castelli, Brichet right on the side. Bertois has actually recovered sufficiently quickly enough to stay in sixth.
Lose too much. It could have been much worse with such an incident.
Well, he could have ended up with some serious damage on that Porsche as well, but managed to get it bounced quite neatly. You were saying about how you have to be careful. Oh, Vernet, very odd line there on the exit there. It's almost like the car hooked up wrong.
Exit on the power too soon, ran out of room on the exit, and
had to take the lock off. Maybe.
I think Loeb's going to be back up towards a second gap, which is over one lap after it was reduced to 2 tenths. Shows why he's a 8-time champion.
It is an interesting thought, though, because Jean-Carl Vernet...
1.4 seconds.
Yeah, Jean-Carl Vernet is one of the young, up-and-coming French star drivers. He's been on the route to Formula One in the past, on the route to Champ Cars, signed by Peugeot as a factory driver, was going to race at Le Mans this year with Anthony Davidson, and suddenly the Peugeot option obviously went because they withdrew. Now, re-establishing himself in a championship like this. If you were going to be really tough on Jean-Carl Vernet, which I don't think would be fair, but if you were, you could say, yes, he's Sebastien Loeb, and yes, he's the 8 times world rally champion, but you're a racing driver and he's a rally driver, and you're 24 and he's 39. So you should be able to at least, you know, get amongst this guy.
The trouble is, I think Loeb's just turned up and shown how impressive he is. And Vernet has worked so hard to try and catch him. You know, if you've got the 8-time world champion in front of you in a match in a similar car, you're going to want to beat him. It's going to be something for the CV.
Of course, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But he could be given a hard time for it, or he could be given credit for getting as close to him as he has. Depends on how you look at it, really, isn't it?
So has Vernet taken too much out of the car, trying to stay with Loeb? And that's perhaps why he's now dropped down.
0.7 of a second slower. I wonder how much of that was that mistake he made on the exit of the Buisson hairpin.
Well, up to 2 seconds now, so Loeb's just pulled a nice, comfortable gap now.
Loeb is doing to Vernet what he did to Sebastien Ogier a couple of times, where he's just given him a little metaphorical pat on the head and said, "You're really good, but not yet.
But not quite good enough.
Sunshine. You're not quite there yet." And you know, it's one of those little sort of almost fatherly approach to him, saying, "Yeah, you're mega, but I'm a bit more mega." if there's that sort of thing. This is great. Though. Look at the three of them have come back at each other. Ledegaard, Castelli, and Brichet got spread out a bit, and I think, as you said earlier, Ledegaard seems to be the man struggling the most with the pace. Castelli or even Brichet seems to be the quickest of these three cars.
Yeah, but finding a way past is going to be difficult. You know, these guys, they've been racing now 30 minutes. How much of their tyres do they have left? Are they really going to be able to risk massive outbraking manoeuvres when the guy in front is only a tenth slower, perhaps?
It could be interestingly looking at the lap times. The fastest lap has been set by Julien Brichet, 1:19.685. Admittedly, it was relatively early, and it's the other drivers ahead of him. Castelli, Ledegaard, Vernet, 19.8. Loeb, 19.9, his quickest lap. And for Beltoise, a 19.8 as well. So that's interesting, isn't it? Brichet, maybe that's that sharpness from jumping out the old RCZ so quickly. That could have helped him, couldn't it?
It could have helped him, darling. We've got someone.
This is our errant back marker, isn't it? Maybe he's been brought in. I don't know. I doubt it, but who knows? Who knows? No. So what does it mean in terms of the Gentleman's Cup? Well, who's still leading that? I think, looking down, it is still... Is it Mr. Lapierre?
Lapierre, up in 10th place.
Lapierre, ahead of Bruno Stratzer, who's come through well. And third place, Ange Bard after his spin. And how far is he away? Just looking at the laps. Not see it at the moment. Ange Bard. No, he's far enough away. So Castelli and Brichet. You can see Brichet. Whoa! Castelli gets sideways. Has he tidied it up enough, though, Will?
I think these guys are going to be neck and neck across the line. I mean, they're trying everything to get past Ledegaard. He's just not budging.
And you notice the brake lights came on just a little bit before that corner. Is that where they're just maybe tapping up the brake pedal?
I'm not convinced, because I've actually seen these lights flickering on and off as they head up this hill. So there we go, just as I say. I wonder whether it's a trick of the camera. These LED rear lights just flickering away.
Or it could be just where he's going over the bumps. It's just changing the camera angle to make it look like they're coming on.
Perhaps.
We'll find out maybe. So with 7 minutes exactly remaining, we think around about 4 laps perhaps is all we're going to see now, maybe 5. 24 laps completed of this 2.760 kilometre circuit here in Pau, in the foothills of the Pyrenees, one of the most spectacular and exciting circuits, and it's certainly, we've saved the best to last today in our coverage of the racing in Tissier Park. And Beaumont Park is the area we're looking at down here. What we are looking at is some drivers who have absolutely thoroughly entertained us, Will.
Absolutely. I mean, these three have raced tooth and nail for the last 20 minutes. But Ledegaard seems to have the measure. You know, he keeps putting in nice, consistent times. Gaps, it's a pretty stagnant gap. I mean, I think Prix, despite all his efforts, I'm starting to get the impression he might have used up all of his tyres. So I'm not sure if he can make any more inroads on the other two guys in front.
So with just under 6 minutes remaining here in Pau, it is Sebastien Loeb who leads his young teammate Jean-Carl Vernet by just over 1.6 seconds. And third, Comel Edgar ahead of Gad Castelli, Julien Prichet and Vincent Beltoise. Now, what have we got going on?
Side.
Is that now that is Beltoise, so that behind us must have been the fight.
Martins.
Oh, bit of oversteer there. Noel Martins. They should be the drivers we were watching. I think Martins is the car that's one of the most distinctive liveried cars. I think it's easy to see. Yeah, Noel is going to be charging hard. Remember, Noel is second in the championship behind Comel Edgar by only 3 points, but Julien Prichet is also joint second. So I think at the end of this race, we may well see that Ledegard will extend his championship lead. Prichet will move to second on his own. And Sylvain Noel will be third, just ahead of Gad Castelli. But that's assuming it all works out the way we think. Thought that was Ledegard being passed then.
No, another back marker.
Is that Bard, I think?
Yeah, it could well be, actually.
Orange Bard, certainly.
They're all through pretty cleanly. Gap still pretty much the same. I think we're going to need a mistake or a lost the late breakers manoeuvre.
So we just watch with interest with just a few minutes remaining here in this Porsche Carrera Cup France for 2012, the third race of the season, the second race weekend. Two races at Lebanon already. Comel Edgar winning one of them, and Julien Prichet winning the other with Sylvain Noel and with Jean-Carl Vernet also on the podium. In addition to that, we saw Sacha Bottema take a third position. And Lonnie Martins up there as well. So they're trying to manage the oversteer now. The lap times have dropped away by, actually not as much as I would have thought, by just over a second from, in fact just under a second for, in the case of Loeb, from his best lap, despite 36 and a half minutes of racing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference there, that Loeb's laps are staying within half a second, whereas Prichet, who's got the fastest up the race, is fluctuating more like a second and a half. And I think that's the difference between maintaining looking after your tyres throughout the duration and short, sharp, aggressive bursts when you're battling with the guys in front. Speaking of the leader, there he goes, heading out to the park section. Looks pretty comfortable there with that gap.
And you wonder how much more Sebastien Loeb would have in reserve if he needed to. I think he's driving quickly but efficiently, very smooth, no dramas. You listen to the downshifts, the throttle applications, you watch the steering inputs. And none of the overdriving that had been associated with rally drivers of the past. Maybe the classic sort of Scandinavian style of driving, which was all launch it on the way in and then control it on the way out. Not for Loeb, not for these kind of drivers. It's much tidier. It's absolute finesse at its best, isn't it?
Yeah, he's really using the car, as you said, so efficiently. He's not feeling the need to slide the car around, rattle curbs. If you just watch the Prichet battle and the guys in front rattle through there, as you saw there, lots of curbs being taken, slight hints of oversteer on the way out of corners, just showing that their tyres aren't quite at their best.
So 2 minutes remain. I think that's going to be perhaps one more lap for Sebastien Loeb when he crosses the line. He's looking to see where Loeb is at the moment. I think he's in sector 1 at the moment. Yes, he would be. He's just completed sector 1, so when he crosses the line, I think there'll be just over a minute left. And so that, I think, may well see him get the last lap ball. Let's hope he sees it in the darkness anyway.
Yeah, not the easiest thing to see. I'm sure they'll have the pit lane lit up.
wonder how many of the support race drivers are here watching this. I wonder if the F3 guys are here watching this display.
Oh, I think anyone who's gone back to the hotel shouldn't be allowed to come back tomorrow if they're not staying and watching this.
We know what these young racing drivers are like. They've been told to go to bed early and everything.
Oh, true.
It is 10:32 local time. So the time that all finishes, it's going to be, everybody's gone back to the paddock. It'll be close to 11 o'clock. They'll probably be tucked up in bed with their hot chocolate by then, won't they?
Probably. It's an early start for some of the boys in the morning, but I still can't help but think Sebastien Loeb winning on the streets of Po wouldn't be worth staying up for.
Yeah, I know, certainly it would be on my list of to-do things as a spectator, wouldn't it, you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And look, Prix, one last chance. It's the last lap. He knows it's the last lap. But then again, so does Castelli, and so does Comme Ledegar. That's Ledegar at the head of Castelli, and then Prix. Which way is it going to go? I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Prix have a little go on the last lap.
I think you're right. I think we may see something. We're back on board with Loeb. Actually, not that far away from the guys battling for third position. We see 1 and 2 go through. And there we go, Prix. I think at this point he might be happy with the points. Do you not think?
It's going to require a bit of a proper run, hopeful, isn't it? But you never know. Never say never, as they say.
I'm sure if he sees an opportunity, he will take it. But these guys have been bumper to bumper for so long now. I would have thought if we were going to see an overtake, we would have seen it by now.
Castelli seemed to go into defensive mode there. I think he's accepted he's not going to have a go at Ledegar. And we've accepted that Sebastien Loeb is the master of all he purveys, the 8 times world champion, recently won his 70th World Rally event, and he wins on the streets of Po, the Porsche Carrera Cup Matmut Championship for 2012 in Po. Sees a win for Loeb from Jean-Carl Vernet, a brilliant drive to third position for Comme Ledegar, the championship leader ahead of Gad Castelli, Julien Prix, and I think Vincent Beltoise is going to hang on to 6th after a spin. He was running third, having qualified there. Sylvain Noël, and then Lonnie Martins, Romain Monti. Christophe Lapierre looks to have won the category B for the gentleman drivers ahead of Bruno Stratzer and Ange Bard. So, pretty breathless stuff, Will. What a great way to end the day.
Fantastic. I think Vernet just pulled alongside Sebastien there just to say, how'd you do that?
Did you see the marshals there? They're waving as if to say, we are not worthy. And that says it all, really. The respect and the affection that this man has from his fans throughout France. And absolutely right, he said throughout the world, in fact. Well, Sebastien Loeb Racing is surely going to be a force to be in France, being interviewed by a Frenchman in English. So Loeb wins it by 1.3 from Vernet Ledegar, championship leader ahead of Castelli Prix. Great battle for them. Beltoise Noël second in the championship coming in, and then winner of the B category Christophe Lapierre ahead of Bruno Stratzer, and then Ange Bard recovers into third place. But we see a fantastic performance by Sebastien Loeb. He wins on the streets of Po.
Nous disait donc qu'il était extrêmement ravi d'amener cette première victoire.
Main thing that had happened for the front runners was Beltoise dropping out. That handed the position to Ledegar. And there was a great scrap between Ledegar, Castelli, Prix, and Beltoise recovered to 7th position. Sylvain Noël, who was also coming into this championship event, was second in the series. So Ledegar led Noël, Prix, and Castelli. And if my maths are correct, I think we've probably got still Ledegar leading, but with Prix now in second
just
position.
To quickly point out, sorry to cut across you, Simon, there, but are we going to have a standing start this time? Of course, last night was a rolling start for these Porsches in the dark.
Yep.
I think we're going to have a standing start. That's perhaps what Sebastien was going on about during his interview, being a stop-go. So therefore, these guys are going to have to play with the clutch at a biting point and get good launches with these 450 brake horsepower cars. Not that easy to get off the line, so that'll be a first for these guys. So we'll have to see if perhaps this is the opportunity for Vernet to topple the great man into turn one.
Yep, well, Loeb on pole by just a few thousandths of a second ahead of Vernet Ledegar, and Sacha Botteman, we haven't spoken much about him yet. Sylvain Noël ahead of Vincent Beltois. Julien Brichet and Gaël Castelli both had a great race yesterday. Laurie Martins, Ange Bard, Christophe Lapierre and Nicolas Maroc. Frustrating qualifying for him. Romain Monti, Didier Moreau, Tony Samon, Roland Berville, who didn't finish the first race. Bruno Stratzer did well from the back of the grid to finish second in the gentleman's category. So the gentleman's class, as the name suggests, for guys that are racing out there for fun, not as fully professional drivers or as semi-pros as some of these guys are, but no doubt in my mind that they will be taking it just as seriously. The driver that was on pole position for both races in the gentleman's category was very experienced Ange Bard, the 43-year-old former GT Open racer, also raced in FIA GTs, raced at Le Mans, won the Ferrari Challenge a couple of times, and now as they come around on their Tour de Formation, the formation lap, reminder that it's Sebastien Loeb, Jean-Carl Vernet, Comme Ledegar, Sacha Botteman, Sylvain Noël, Vincent Beltois. They're the drivers that we're going to be watching the most in terms of possible challenges for podiums and victories. But interesting, you know, we know that Loeb is used to getting a car off the line very quickly, but that's usually got four-wheel drive, and in the past has even had launch control in it.
Yeah, he would have had anti-lag, launch control, all sorts of things to help him get a start, but now it's all about clutch control. Not for an instant suggesting that Sebastien Loeb can't get a Porsche off the line, but this might just be perhaps where he comes across as a bit more mortal regarding the rest of the grid, you know. So this might be an opportunity to see if the dominance of the pole position men might be toppled here, but I'm fairly confident Sebastien will get his car safely off the line, and we'll have to see who can lead as we get into turn one, as the last of the cars start to line up.
Yeah, just bringing it to, this is always the worst bit for a driver, just coming up to the line, or once
someone at the back doesn't seem to really have got the idea of lining up in order, but hey-ho, they're going to wave the green flag anyway. We're going to be underway, so red light on the gantry will come on, and as soon as it goes off, we will be racing, and away they go. Short hold. Great start by Sebastien Loeb there, straight into the lead. Vernet pulls in right behind him, and they head off down to turn one.
Yeah, good start throughout there. I think Julien Brichet got a very good start as well. From, I think his seventh on the grid was Brichet, somebody up on the curb on the exit. We've seen that before. As before, we expect to see the yellow flag waving. It's going to be Loeb from Vernet, from Ledegar, from Botteman, and then the rest of the pack will slither through. Yellow flag always waving here just to ensure that we don't have drivers trying to charge down the inside into a corner, which would almost inevitably cause contact, has done so far this weekend. Not always on the first lap, but on other laps as well.
Yeah, not the ideal place for cars to go two abreast, especially when there's this many cars in a train. Everyone's safely through, a bit single file at the moment. We'll look at these guys to settle down as they rattle out of the park, taking lots of curb in these cars, can really bounce over all these curbs, searching for every advantage they can get. And our poleman Sebastien Loeb seems to be pulling a bit of an early gap as he's got some clear road ahead. Vernet was very, very fast during the last race, so he may be able to keep Sebastien in check, but at the moment Sebastien Loeb leads, and as they come across the line, I'll give you an idea of by how much. 1.6 seconds in one lap, so it's already looking pretty promising.
So Sacha Botteman is under investigation. The 23-year-old French driver, one of the many Sebastien Loeb racing drivers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in the top 5 at the moment. It's only Comme Ledegar in the number 4 car, who's currently sitting in third position. That's actually an interloper in the whole Sebastien Loeb thing. That's the silver and blue car that you see just ahead of Botteman. And then Beltois behind him, as you said, had a spin coming into the Parc Beaumont section as they arrived then at Foch. Just locked the back of the car up on the brakes, turning in there during the night now. Looking at the sector times, Loeb has just set the fastest first sector of anyone. He's about to come through sector 2 in just a moment. I think he will have just done that.
Well, 3 different lines there for the battle for second place. These guys right on top of each other. I think this is probably where the main action is going to come from, because while these guys are all jostling for position. Sebastien Loeb will just try and disappear off into the distance. As you can see, his gap now. We have confirmed a drive-through penalty for car number 6, who jumped the start. So that's one of the guys in this battle. Sacha Bottomat will be coming in for a drive-through penalty within the next 2 or 3 laps.
Yeah, that's the black car with the red roof that's charging up the hill there. Qualified well, much better than the race yesterday. Didn't have a good race yesterday, only 13th in race 1. Had a mixed weekend in the opening race meeting at Lebanon. They tend to be running alongside the French GT Championship as a package of races. This event plus the Peugeot RCZ Cup, the Midjet Series and the Autosport Academy. They're all series that we see there. Sometimes the Alps and the Renault will be as part of it as well. But of course, this in itself is a race weekend which is special because it's Po, because it's as important as something like Monaco is for Formula 1 drivers in every other level. This is pretty special, and the racing is delivering the expectations for the crowd.
So unfortunately, with that drive-through penalty for our current, the number 4 man, Sacha Bottomat, he, of course, that's going to take him out of this current contention, which is going to leave Ledegar a bit more free to attack Vernet during this race.
Yeah, Ledegar is going to be able to concentrate on the job in hand. It means Vincent Beltoise, who's dropped away a little bit, is going to be able to get himself potentially on the back of Ledegar, Sylvain Noël, Julien Prichet, Gael Castelli, drivers that they were in that scrap yesterday. Whether they'll be able to get stuck in and get a little bit closer to the front of the pack. So here we go once again. It is Vernet leading, Ledegar leading Bottoman, who we think is going to have to come in very soon in the next lap or so. Not sure if these guys have radios in the cars. They will have pit boards that they can read.
I think there are no radios in Carrera Cup, is that right?
I think that's right.
I know it's for UK. I don't know if it's a rule throughout the different series, but I would imagine so. So at the moment, Ledegar's not going to know that Bottomat has got the drive-through penalty, so he's still going to be thinking about defending as well as chasing down Vernet. So as soon as he sees, I'm guessing Bottomat's probably going to dive into the pits this lap or maybe the next. I'm not sure how many laps they're allowed to pass the drive-through penalty before they have to serve it. So
usually 3, isn't it?
Yeah,
most,
exactly.
Most regulations. Yeah.
Whether he's seen the board, is he?
Yeah,
No, he dives
he's
in now. So that's freed up. Ledegar's can now concentrate on chasing down Vernet. Whether he can do so or not, whether he's got the pace, he does seem to have, as Vernet he just set a time that knocked Sebastien Loeb's time off the top spot. So he's clearly got the pace at the moment. So whether he can now put it to good use and straight out the pits.
Yeah, very fired up. Sacha Bottoman is obviously going to be working very hard to try to reclaim some of those positions. Still looking like he's in the top 10, which is indicative of just how hot the pace has been at the very front of the pack, with just under 14 minutes remaining of this 20-minute race. They've completed 4 racing laps so far, and that's that fight for second that we can see there. There goes Loeb through our shot. Just looks very calm. It sets his personal best of the race on that lap, 26.1, but Ledegar in fact fastest for sector 1 on that lap, and then Loeb goes fastest overall on sector 2 until then Vernet goes slightly quicker. So the end of this lap's going to be some really hot laps. I think this is going to be spectacularly quick, isn't it?
Yeah, the pace is definitely there. Vernet is actually upped his pace, and then he's just been matched by Sebastien Loeb there. So these guys rattling in some fantastic laps, and Vernet now again setting the fastest lap of the race. So the tyres obviously at the moment are at their optimum. These guys can really rattle in some times. Compared to yesterday, they're already up on speed, setting much faster times in these daylight hours versus last night's night race.
Yeah, it was a low 1:18 was the pole position time for Sebastien Loeb, double pole for the French Rally World Champion, but 19.446, a very impressive time by Vernet. Conditions you would think are better in every respect because it's obviously warmer, so the tyres are going to be in a little bit more effectively. The track will probably be a little bit warmer as well as the ambient temperature. because again during the night time that clearly will have dropped away. And of course the other key factor, as you said last night, Will, is visibility, picking out your turning points, understanding where to position the car. Going to be a heck of a challenge for all of these guys in the dark. So they managed to come through that well, but I'd explain why they're a little bit quicker now.
And we've got Julien Prix coming through the screen at the moment. These guys hotly contesting what's the spaces just outside the podium. And these guys, Prix very racy last night, so we know he's not scared to try and do a little bit of overtaking. So we'll see how these guys develop. They're heading up the hill now.
Gael Castelli in the yellow car that's at the back of that pack there, Castelli Racing Team. He did a great job yesterday, really putting the pressure on Koimo Ledegaard. He finished 4th on the road. He would have been 3rd in the points, of course, because of that situation with Sebastien Loeb not scoring. Really impressed us. He was the champion last year in the Seat Super Cup, was Castelli. Also won the THP Spider Cup, the Peugeot Spider Cup in the past. Raced that in the past. And
this guy's so close through here.
Look at this.
Bumper to bumper. Prix looking really racy.
Prix's really impressed us over the weekend with his level of commitment. Certainly one of the most aggressive drivers. I think in the Porsches at this stage there's others that maybe are a little bit quicker on a single lap, but certainly in a race situation, you can imagine it, were he in the scrap for the lead, he'd be amongst it, fighting hard. Some of the other drivers tend to drop away a little bit, but he seems to have a really good level of focus and concentration. Clearly must be quite good shape as well, because he had to do those 2 pretty tough races back to back last night.
Yeah, an hour sprint race essentially in total, where he had to work very hard through. I think what's happening though a lot of times is your pace can very much get depicted by the group of cars you end up sort of dicing with, and these 3 guys probably capable of going far quicker than they are when they're on their own, but as they're in a group together, they're actually going to slow each other up a little bit. So we'll have to see if one of these guys can make the advantage and break free. Was that another drive-through penalty?
Could have been speeding. Did look like you said he set off a bit rapidly.
Oh, he's now completely down last. That's got to have been Bottomar. So yeah, we just got confirmation that he's had another drive-through. It's got to be for speeding.
That's all it could be, really. I think so, because unless he's been really misbehaving himself out there. But it did look like that. It wasn't so much that he came in particularly quickly, but I think he left. He maybe released the speed limiter. These cars have got a hard cut speed limiter on it, where you can hear them like burbling down the pit lane at a racetrack. And maybe he either released it a bit early or he forgot to put it on. He was trying to judge it on the revs that you've got on the dashboard. That might have been how we tried.
Sometimes frustration can take over, and you know, sometimes you're not quite as happy to abide by the rules as you should be. But the stewards here and everyone, the organisers, really not letting anything slide, you know, being very fair and delivering the penalties for any misbehaving. But it's been a very good race meeting. Standards have been very high for what is essentially quite a difficult environment for these guys to race on and stay out of trouble.
Yeah, well, we haven't really mentioned much about the B category, but here it is. Ange Bard is leading the Trophy B for gentlemen drivers, and he is just running a little bit ahead of Romain Marty. Romain sitting there, Monty rather, sitting there in the A category, in fact, behind him. But then the next
Lapierre just behind, and he's
second.
He started off, I think, leading the B category this weekend, and he won yesterday's race of the B category. So he's going to be desperately looking to catch up with Bard. But I think he's probably got a few points in hand if he does finish behind him. And we ride on board now, Sebastien Loeb, as you watch how fast they end up back across the start-finish line. We've got this right kink here, which will be tremendously fast in these cars. Then heavy on the brakes into turn one, nice and controlled. Sebastian's car not moving around on the brakes. I think he's probably been quite nice to that car, just pounding in consistent laps.
Yeah, Vernet 0.053 slower than Sebastien Loeb on that lap. Loeb setting his personal fastest lap, although The fastest lap of the race was set by Komeledgar on that last lap, 1:19.200. Let's have a look at that.
Fast.
Compares with the time that they did last night. That was a Julien Prichet 19.685, so about 4 tenths faster than they went in the night race. Finished at about 11:15 local time, I think, didn't it?
Yeah, it was very late.
As we were saying, what a great way to spend a Saturday evening in Pau, sitting there watching the 8 times world champion put on a masterclass of driving in a Porsche. But the great thing was it wasn't just about that. Vernet was there or thereabouts. There was a point where a marker meant that Sebastien Loeb suddenly had Vernet literally pushing him along, but he got his head down and pulled away, and there was still that great fight going on behind between Komeledgar, Castelli and Julien Prichet, which kept us thoroughly entertained throughout the whole way. Vincent Beltois looking good for a solid 4th, perhaps. That's going to help his points. But I think from a championship point of view, it's going to mean that Ledegar will probably still come away as championship leader at the end of this weekend, but Vernet will be quite significantly closer to him.
Ledegar really committed through turn 1. Lots opposite lock, clearly working his rear tyres very hard in a bid to catch up with Vernet in front. You know, we've got 6 and he's drifted out so wide. He's obviously taken a lot of life out of his rear tyres because he's just been crucified on the exit of the hairpin there. I think a little bit of overdriving there, a little bit of impatience. We watch the replay, just watch he's on the opposite lot before the apex, you know, rear end really carrying some momentum. Obviously the engine right back over the rear wheels, so once this thing breaks away, it will continue to slide out wide, so you have to keep it in check.
You see Vernet, though, still working his car pretty hard. It's still moving around underneath. That's the thing I think that we were both so impressed with watching Loeb, and you can see it a lot more clearly today in the daylight than we could under the floodlights last night, is that it just, even though it's visible that the car is travelling so quickly, it never ever really looked anything other than just a real
that last shot summed it up. We just saw the 2 first and second men go through. Sebastian's car like it's on rails. Vernet in second, a little bit of a drift on the exit. And like you're saying, Sebastian just seems to be able to drive the car exactly within its limits, lap after lap, corner after corner, and it's what's bringing him the result here.
Yep, and
big lock up there, and that's no out. So if we've got to run up the hill for Prichet, is he going to be able to take advantage of that?
Yeah, let's see whether Noel has been able to just get across and defend early enough. I think he did. Castelli will probably be sitting there waiting for Prichet to have a little bit of a go, because he's got that kind of air of a commitment about him, isn't he? But Prichet there just calmly waited.
Oh, if there's an opportunity, he will take it.
Yeah, he's certainly one of the most entertaining drivers we've seen, and it's always interesting as you get to know the French guys that are regularly racing over here, because we're used to our UK scene that we follow closely, because it's obviously close to home. We know a lot of the drivers and teams will, don't we? But here it's great to learn about some of these top line drivers. It'd be fun to bring them over, wouldn't it, and see how they got on with the British Championship.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Absolutely. It's a shame we only see them once they reach the real top level motorsport. It's great to see these levels, because this level of motorsporting is fantastically entertaining on our side of the water, but just to see, obviously they've got a whole series of the same club level championships and national championships that we have, and there's some fantastic talent.
And their talent of the highest talent of the lot, of course, is the man that's leading. 1.3 seconds now, showing that Vernet was around about a tenth of a second quicker than
that lead, just
Loeb.
coming down a little bit, but
you never get the sensation that Loeb is under pressure, do you? It just looks like he's controlling it, you know.
He just always looks like he's got enough in the locker to get the job done. Just by the way, he's definitely not using his tyres as much, so he should definitely have the legs. With only 3 minutes remaining, I'm sure he's got this all in control.
And that's been the case throughout his rallying career. The story of Loeb comes back with healthy tyres more often than not. Interesting, even on gravel, on some of the hardest rallies that you see, some of the Cyprus and Greece and places like that, and Jordan, where they've got a lot of really hard surfaces, that quite often it's Loeb seems to be the man that will take the tyre and seem to make it work for him. Even a gravel tyre obviously can wear out if it's being overdriven. He seems to have that finesse regardless of the circumstances. So clearly is being transmitted in terms of the way he's adapting to driving these cars, and I keep saying it over and over again. This is a man that's put in top 10 times in a Formula One car in not that distant past. Finished on the podium at the Le Mans 24 Hours in a prototype. Had a test with Peugeot in the 908, in fact, as did Gael Castelli, who we talked about earlier, as his prize for winning the THP Spider Cup. Hell of a prize that is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Loeb just seems to take everything in his stride. He seems to have this wonderfully calm and relaxed attitude towards what he's doing.
We just saw from his onboard just then, so smooth and tidy. However, Vernet, not that far behind him, but we've got so little time left to run. I think Sebastian's got this well and truly under control.
Yeah, I mean, the frustrating thing, and you know this as I do from my racing many years ago, is you'll be in this situation where you're not that far behind. You can see the guy. On the brakes, you'll take a bit of time out of him, and then he'll pull away a bit on the way back out. And it's this seesaw effect. It's hugely frustrating. It can, if you're not focused, it can lead you to massively overdrive and make mistakes. And we've seen it happen throughout the weekend here. Prix, though, putting more pressure on Noel. Castelli, meanwhile, still working hard. Prix and Castelli were in the scrap yesterday, but it was a little bit higher up the order. It was with Comel Ledegar for trying to take third away from him. But this time it's Loeb, Vernet, Ledegar, then Bertoise, then this scrap, as you can see, for fifth, Noel, Prix, Castelli.
Yeah, qualifying, just once again, qualifying so crucial for these guys, because we've seen these guys run nose to tail for quite some time now, and even someone who we've seen the capabilities of Prix, completely stuck behind a car who's clearly holding him up. But because of the street circuit, it's just unfortunate, unless you're massively quicker, it's very, very hard to overtake. So qualifying was, really the key here. And that man going through your screen now on pole position for both races. So starts the best possible place, controls the race, and he's just extended his lead a little bit. There we go. Just pulled another few tenths, just up the gap to 1.5 seconds over 1.2 from the last lap. So everything in hand. I think is he going to take the flag on this lap?
Well, Vernet will probably be thinking, oh, I wish he hadn't turned up, but we're glad that he did. It's Sebastien Loeb who does take victory. A double victory here in Pau. He took the first ever victory for Sebastien Loeb Racing, his own team, in the earlier race of the weekend. Look at the run to the line. It looked like Prix was maybe ready to pull out and have a little look, but no, he tucks back in and takes sixth position. So a great weekend for Loeb. Double victory, double second place for Vernet, a double third position for Ledegar. Is that Mrs. Loeb down there? I think they may well have been. She enjoys a bit of co-driving with her husband every now and again.
Terrifying.
Well, I suppose if you're going to sit next to anyone in a rally car, you might as well be.
It might as well be Sebastien Loeb.
Really. That's it's a little bit less fearsome, isn't it? Then, but what an impressive performance by Loeb, by the team. Vernet, well, maximum points for him this weekend, even though, of course, Loeb has won on the road. It's Vernet, he will have taken double lots of 20 points, and I think let's have a look down at the fastest laps, see who's got that. Ledegar got the fastest lap for this one, 19.2, so we'd have got the extra point for that. Vernet would have got the extra point, of course, as Sebastian's business partners and engineers. Loeb would have got the Vernet would have also got the extra point for pole, because although, as we said, Loeb was effectively there, of course, in real terms, he didn't score.
Fastest lap going to Ledegar.
Definitely, yep. Brilliant job by him. So it is Loeb in the end by 2.3 seconds. It looked like Vernet backed off a little bit at the end. Ledegar, Vincent Beltoise, Sylvain Noel, Julien Prix and Gael Castelli. Noel, Prix, Castelli, Ledegar being the guys at the top of the championship. Vernet right in amongst it once again. A win, of course, for Ange Bard in the B category ahead of Christophe Lapierre and Tony Samon. As you said,